Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to MACPA's monthly town hall. We're glad you're here. I'm Jackie Brown. I'm the CEO of MACPA, and this month our focus will be on business and industry members. But that doesn't mean that all members aren't welcome, and that doesn't mean that all of you have something to learn here today, and we're excited to have you here. As with our other town halls in this new format, the 1 to 2 hour versions, we're focusing on a different hard trend each month. Some of you who have been on these before know that we use Burris Research, and these are the 3 hard trends that they identify. And today we're going to be talking a lot about technology, so buckle up. And as usual, next slide, we have Conferences.io already open for you. We want to find out who's in the room, where you work, what's your company's back to the office plan. And notice I didn't say back to work plan because we've all been working very hard, haven't we? And some have been in the office the entire time and some never go in the office. But we're interested to know what's your back to the office plan, how's that unfolding for all of your organizations. And MACPA is really interested to know too about your readiness to return to live events at MACPA. As you can imagine, and for you and for all of us, trying to figure out how to budget things has been crazy. And so hearing from you when you think you want to come back to some MACPA live events would be really helpful for us. So go ahead and jump in those polls. And just as a reminder, we're here to connect, protect, and achieve. That's our mission and our commitment to you as members and to the profession. So today's town hall is really going to have a couple of features of this. It's going to be the connect piece. We're going to connect you to some of our colleagues in business and industry with some different perspectives, and hopefully that's going to help you achieve great results in your career and in your organization. Next slide is our board of directors, and actually one of our panelists today is the chair of our board of directors, Avanette Blanding, but we just like to show this slide to show you who your leadership is in the organization and the diversity of perspectives that they bring. Yesterday, we actually had our last board meeting of the fiscal year, and it was amazing. We took a look with our leadership team and our board, Vision MACPA 3.0. We're pretty excited about sharing that with you at our next town hall, actually in June 18th. We'll have our annual meeting and our town hall, and we're excited to be able to introduce you to all of that. And behind the board of directors is an amazing staff leadership team. And today, again, I'm Jackie Brown, CEO, but we will have our panelist. One of our panelists is our controller, Laura Swan, who's also a CPA. Making sure all the technology happens behind the scenes is our Director of Learning, Dee Sullivan. Mary Beth Halperin's on here too to help answer any questions. Bill Sheridan's on here, our Chief Communications Officer. And Rebecca Brown is going to be moderating our amazing panel today. So that's our leadership team. We always like to give a shout out to our 100% membership organizations. And these are firms and companies that have committed to having their finance teams and their accounting staff, CPAs, be members of MACPA. So the more names we add to this list, the smaller it gets, but we'd love to have your organization listed here. If you're interested in that and learning more, be sure and reach out to Rebecca Brown, our Director of Development and all things membership. And then finally, we like you to meet our MACPA champions. These are emerging leaders and firms and organizations that are sort of our inside connection to your teams and to MACPA and everything that we're doing and to help your firms and your organizations and you achieve great things. And the next slide is another group of very special people that are helping you with resources. I'm going to let Bill Sheridan talk about them. He leads the team that brings these awesome resources to you. Bill?
Yeah, these are our preferred providers. We like to think of them, though, really as partners. These relationships have truly become like partnerships, right? These folks offer resources, solutions across all segments of our profession, including business and industry. I mean, we've built some great partnerships with the folks at Sage and Xero, ADP, Profix, ByteCheck, Oracle, NetSuite, just a host of others. And they're doing things that can keep you all more future ready, right? And thrive a little bit more in this ever-changing world, which is becoming harder and harder to do. So any help that we can get there is certainly welcome, and help with these folks is really the key word. They truly really want to help. So please reach out to them, find out a little bit more about what they do and how they can help you. Just a quick tip, you can get to know a lot of these folks by attending our virtual beach retreat coming up in June. So look for that. Many of them will be participating. Be sure to check that out. And you can find the details on the beach retreat and all of these fine folks, as they say, at our website, macpa.org.
So I want to kick off our conversation with introducing this amazing panel that we have on digital transformation. Jackie mentioned that we're going to be focusing on that technology hard trend and digital transformation for this business and industry focused town hall. So our first panelist is our MACPA chair and also CFO of Maritime Applied Physics Corporation, Avanette Blanding. So thank you, Avanette, for being here. Next, we have MACPA Foundation Board member and Senior Director of Corporate and Global Accounting at Under Armour, Nick Tatum. Thank you, Nick, for joining us. And then finally, MACPA's own controller, Laura Swan. So in our conversation today, we're going to have really three great perspectives at the CFO role at a government contractor in Maryland, a senior director at a publicly traded global company, and a controller at a small nonprofit association, and what digital transformation in accounting and finance departments of all sizes really looks like. So I wanted to start our conversation off with this slide, which I know you have seen before. As Tom Hood used to joke, we could show it year after year and it would still be new to some people. But I know we talked about it before, but it is so important because we are in this industry 4.0, where just like the industrial revolutions prior to it, technology continues to change the way we work. Except now with this 4.0, those changes are on this exponential scale, right? It's not just steam power to electricity or the paper ledger to the Excel spreadsheet. It's what Daniel Burst describes as game-changing technology that not just change the how of our roles and our positions and our responsibilities, but actually the what of what we're doing in those roles. But like William Gibson said, although the future is here, it's not evenly distributed, right? All of our organizations are somewhere on this diffusion curve. And even within organizations, different departments and teams can be in different places along this curve. And there are definite advantages and disadvantages to each place along that curve. Laura, Nick, and Avanette, why don't you tell me where your organization is on that curve, do you think?
I think that we are early majority. Go back to looking at that. I think that we're a little bit ahead of some things. We're kind of, looking for the newer or helpful tools and things like that. That's where I put us, early majority.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Nick? Oh, Nick, I think you're on mute. Somebody had to do it.
Oh, apologies. Apologies. I'll be the first. I wanted to be the first one to make it easy for everybody else.
Yes.
I would say we're probably somewhere between early majority and late majority, where we're definitely not on the early adopter innovation side. We have plans in place. We've actually implemented several things in several test cases that we'll touch on a little bit later. And we're now leaning in full force on this transformation journey for the next 3 to 5 years and getting really excited about it. So we've had some early success with some of the trial things that we put in place. And as those things have gone well, now we're like leaning all the way in as an accounting and finance org into transformation.
Great. And Avanette?
So, Rebecca, I would have to say, unfortunately, for finance, we are probably late majority laggards because of some of the challenges related to being a defense contractor on the finance side. On the services that we provide to our customers, we are innovators and early adopters. So it's kind of ironic that for everything that we do for our customers, we are at the forefront. But when it comes to internal finance and accounting, we're late majority laggards, and we're hoping to change that.
Laura and Nick, either of you see that difference in the organization and the accounting and finance team in that sense as well?
I think for us, we kind of made a big jump a few years back as a whole organization. And so I think that accounting and finance for us is up to date with the rest of our organization.
Yeah, I would say, we, similar to Evanette, we are a product and innovation company. So, I don't think our internal processes and systems will ever keep up with some of the things and some of the cutting edge innovation that we have for our products. But we are getting a lot of acceleration here because, if you don't advance here, you'll become a laggard and it'll be really hard to catch up. And we won't be able to achieve the other goals that we have. So not at the forefront here, but definitely further along than I thought we would be at this point.
Yep. And I was able to quickly multitask and get that poll in there. So it looks like half of our audience are in that late majority, about 24%. Oh, as soon as I said it, I knew more people would answer, but we're still at 50%. But it's close. So the majority of us are early majority to late majority. So we got not a whole lot of innovators. Accounting and finance, unfortunately, we're not known for innovative thinking all the time. One of those like first professions, right? Early adopters, 12% though. Organizations, accounting and finance teams that are early adopters. So great to see that. So this, what you're seeing here, this SEMA's Future of Finance report also identified the 3 most kind of critical technologies that they saw to really bring in business success. And those technologies were cloud computing, advanced analytics, and process robotics, or RPA, robotic process automation. So I also wanted to poll our audience today and see where you all are on in the adoption of these technologies. So how cloud-based are you? And as they're answering that, maybe Laura, you want to tell us about the MACPA?
I was going to say, I looked at this and thought, we're 100% cloud-based, even the finance team. I said, we're 100%. And then I backed it up 0.1% because we still have to go into the office maybe every 10 days for some check deposits. So that's the only thing that's keeping us from being 100%. We've been working for the last 14 months seamlessly without anyone in the office, except for that one time a week or so.
Awesome. Nick. Oh, Nick, we can't hear you.
I would say it's a mix between the two. We do have some on-prem solutions, but a lot of cloud-based solutions. And it really has given a lot of freedom to the accounting team. I don't know how we would have made it through 2020 and in the first quarter of 21 without great cloud-based solutions like Blackline, where we can do all of our recs, all of our journal entries. And it's just one of those opportunities. Had we not done that, obviously we didn't foresee a global pandemic, but we could kind of foresee the importance, the globalization of the company and team being dispersed in different locations at times, how important it could be to be cloud-based. So still a mix, but moving a lot more to the cloud.
Yeah. And Evanette, I know you mentioned the government contractor and defense contractor in particular makes this hard. So what about you all?
Yes, so we are not cloud-based for our internal solutions because of the risk of the cyber issues. We were really close. I've been working really hard to get senior management on board with a cloud solution, and then the SolarWinds attack occurred that truly impacted the defense industry, and we had to quickly reconsider what it was worth. So cloud does offer many opportunities and ease of use throughout the organization, but for us, it also comes with a major vulnerability that could risk some of our IP and other requirements that we have on our government contracts. So unfortunately, we are not cloud-based for our software, but we do have a lot of other solutions that we're able to utilize. And during the pandemic, it made it easy to be able to work from home when you need to. So we found solutions that could work.
Yeah, we're all managing and all figured out ways, right? Looking at the audience results here, it looks like about 66% are either almost there, like most systems, or halfway there. So making some progress. 14% are 100% cloud, and 19% are in that not cloud-based yet. And I know we do have a large group of government contractor members because of where we are in the country, right? And so that does make that hard. So the next technology you see there is that advanced analytics. So I'm going to open up that poll and see, how many of our members are using advanced analytics. Nick, how about you? What is Under Armour doing with advanced analytics?
Yeah, so from the accounting side, this is one of the areas where we want to dig in more. Not doing a lot here, but we've been looking at the possibility to use advanced analytics, especially when we think about some of our complex judgments and estimates, and how advanced analytics can kind of help us there. So, I would say of the three pillars we have here, this is the one that we are not quite as far along on, but do see some of the promise, especially for accountants and some of the data-heavy areas where we focus.
Mm-hmm. And even the term advanced analytics has such a spectrum, right, of like what that means, up until like IBM Watson and AI to some more basic kind of tools that you can use. So Laura, I know we've used some tools at MACPA. Why don't you talk about where we're using advanced analytics?
We are. One of the tools that we've adopted, I guess, in the last year or so is Tally Street, which is an app that will help to analyze our AR and top customers. It kind of plugs right into your invoicing system and gives a lot of great automatic feedback on that information. Has been really helpful. And I've been playing around in the last, I guess, 2 years or so with Excel and Power Query. And it's one of my fun things that I like to do and use for analyzing whatever, GL data, anything that you can dump into an Excel spreadsheet. And then Power Query is just a great tool that helps you clean up the data and then build tables and build, lots of things to analyze and make it pretty. And that's a good thing and fun thing to do.
Yeah, and that is just an Excel add-on. I think that's freely available, right? Yeah, so that's where you have that spectrum of something that's freely available to everybody, and then you have the more advanced kind of apps and mm-hmm. software installations almost for advanced analytics. How about you, Avenette?
So we play around with it a little bit, but it is an area that does have that broad spectrum, and we would like to use more, even on our engineering side as we continue to grow, partnering with some of our procurement specialists to look at trends within our vendors, within our products and material purchases. So that's an area that we'll be exploring a lot more.
Yeah, it looks like, based on our panelists and our members kind of are represented in your stories there, 15% are using those advanced analytics, 27% starting to explore some of those tools, and about 58% saying, not yet, but maybe after being inspired today, they'll start to explore some of those tools, because at least that Power Query, like just something freely available. I know it takes time to learn, and then the last one is this process robotics or RPA. And this is one of the ones that just seems so crazy and high level to me, but Nick, are you all doing anything with RPA?
We are, and this is the one that's really driving a lot of the excitement about finance transformation. So about a year ago, we probably started this process maybe a little over a year, but about a year ago, we implemented 3 instances of RPA on 3 processes that are developed pretty well. We have to do them; they're pretty sound, but there's not a lot of decision making, or there's no decision making. It's just, these rote processes that, a machine could do. And this was our test case. We invested, built all 3 out. And, I've dealt with a lot of projects. I've dealt with several implementations. This was by far the best and one of the most fruitful. Almost immediately, pretty much immediately after they were set up and stood up, it began saving the teams a significant amount of time. The process for my team, costing inventory daily for certain items, would take anywhere from half hour to 2 hours a day. Just dedicated, pulling data from systems, doing pivot tables, and now you literally push a button and you get to the result. So it's faster, it's efficient. The degree of accuracy is far higher because you don't have that human element on those things. And we got really excited about it because now it doesn't mean this person, has to go do mechanical work for another 2 hours. It's, an hour of strategy and analysis and, an hour of having more free time in focusing on your career or even focusing on life. So robotics is kind of what pulled a lot of people in and kind of helped us push forward in transformation and accelerate our journey. So it's been really fun, and it's just cool to watch it work and just kind of to see it all play out. So we think there's a lot of opportunity here for us, and are really looking forward to expanding this over the next couple of years. We have a long list, and people can't wait. And everybody puts after we kind of showed this example, everybody went back and pulled together their lists of what they kind of want to get automated.
Their wish list, yeah, definitely. Avenette or Laura, either of your teams using any robotic process automation?
I don't think we're using anything. I wasn't able to come up with anything that we were doing there.
Yeah. Avenette?
We actually have a reporting tool that we use that gathers all the data from multiple sources within the organization and is accessible to everyone. So that has improved a lot of the reporting, especially on our projects where a project manager needs to see a quick snapshot. Like Nick said, instead of someone taking the time to manually go through and add all of these different inputs into one area, now they just open the report and it's there and they can drill down and see the data. So that has been a huge help. And we are looking at other things that we can automate so that people can spend more time adding true value to different tasks instead of just doing something that, that it's a better way.
Yeah. So that's amazing. Just with those 3 technologies and 3 different, types of organizations and sizes of organizations, we were kind of all over the place, right? And it wasn't, the smaller organization couldn't do any of it because of cost necessarily. And it wasn't, obviously Under Armour, investing a little bit more in the RPA and having more resources there too. But I just find that fascinating, right? That there's a place for finance and accounting transformation in any size organization, in any type of organization. So, of course, there's lots of challenges in addition to digital transformation and all the things that we're facing in the world today. And over the last few years, through town halls like this, and then through our former subsidiary, the Business Learning Institute, we've pulled thousands of accounting and finance professionals on their top challenges. And so I wanted to see from our audience, what are the top challenges that you're facing in your accounting and finance roles? And so that takes a couple minutes for people to read through that big list and choose their top 5. But Avenette or Laura or Nick, once you have kind of your top ones or 3, what stick out to you as some of those top challenges?
I have one that might fit in other.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe I should have mentioned it to you, but this is probably a top or a challenge for anybody in this position and in our current world. But I said, what about budgeting and forecasting in an uncertain COVID world?
Yes.
And plus to add on top of it, we've had a little change in our organization, a new
A
business
little.
model. And so that's something that is a challenge for me right now.
Yeah.
I find, some of these others as well listed would certainly be a challenge, but that was just something that was more personal here.
Yeah. Nick, I know in our conversations last week, you mentioned the war for talent and being a challenge that you all are facing.
Yeah, that is definitely one of the biggest issues. Just finding talent and being able to fill roles. Not only so definitely in the accounting and finance side, but trying to fill a role for finance transformation, right? Finding this leader for finance transformation. It's a pretty nuanced role, and so many companies are looking for that. It was funny. I would have people hit me up on LinkedIn that are like, do you know anybody that could fill this transformation role? And I'm like, no. And if I did, I wouldn't tell you because we're trying to do the same thing. But it's so cutting edge, and the population is small, and that's for finance transformation, as well as on the accounting side. I feel like there are fewer accountants that can kind of come in and would be excited about some of these things. So, yeah, kind of bringing in the talent is always a challenge, whether it be this transformation or just core accounting.
Yeah, it's looking like the top challenge that is voted up is role stretch, increasing operational responsibilities to prevent strategic focus. I know for some reason that accounting and finance role seems to get, overseeing of technology or overseeing of HR and all these other things. Ava, do you see that in your role, that role stretch being a top challenge for you?
Definitely. I agree that typically finance and accounting, you get pulled into almost every part of the organization because it really does impact what you do. You have some type of influence or decision related to what everybody else is doing because it all comes down to money eventually. And for a long time, between the HR function and the IT side, those are big drainers on the time you have available. I was finally able to convince my manager that we needed to hire somebody specifically for HR. So we did hire someone, and the person's done an amazing job, but it doesn't completely remove you from being involved in some of those discussions. So I think just having the time to multitask is a challenge often. And like Nick said, finding other talent to come in and assist with that transformation process and the sociology behind it, because it's easy to say, we need to do this, right? We all know that robotic process automation, advanced analytics, all of these things are the future. It's what you need to remain competitive. But to then say to somebody beyond, this is what we need to do, well, how do we get there? And what's involved in getting there? What is it going to cost us, not only financially, but resource-wise, and the social aspect of it, of getting someone to change what they are used to for the last 2 decades can be very challenging. So I find that probably is the biggest challenge of getting beyond, yes, we know we need to do it, and accepting that it may be painful, right? And uncomfortable, and it may not work the first several times. So understanding that it's okay to fail a couple times, but in the end, you will eventually be successful. You just have to have that patience and the courage to take that first step.
No, definitely. I fully agree. By far the biggest challenge, right? We all have really full plates, and now here's another thing. But the one benefit I see with this is, when you do something like an acquisition, it's great for the company. People work really hard, and it's good for the overall company. But it doesn't not normally change someone's day-to-day life, the people that are working really hard on that. But with this, this is great for the company, but the other benefit we have is that it's great for the people that are kind of working on it and doing that work. So this is one of those areas that when you put in the work, it is extra. It may be a night job for some people, it may be some incremental hours, but you directly see some results and some savings, which makes it a lot more palatable, and it makes it a lot more interesting because it's impacting people directly. And that's kind of what we saw on some of the RPA wins, where it's like, okay, I got to invest this time, I got to get trained, I have to, tell this consultant everything I do and work through all the processes. And then you kind of see it come together. And then when it's together, oh, I don't have to do this process anymore. So you kind of get the benefit on the other side, and the company gets the benefit. So biggest challenge, but at least when we get done, there's some tangible, product that somebody can look at and say, wow, this has benefited me in a good way. And that helps build buy-in. So now when it's time to do it again, and you can kind of evangelize this, now you have the support in the company. So I think it's a huge challenge, but once you kind of get those first couple wins, you can kind of start building the support.
Definitely. And so we mentioned it, but with these technologies, right, a lot of those challenges that we just talked about also were about our greatest or, only asset, our people. And with these technologies, with this fourth industrial revolution and this digital transformation, our people and the skills that we need are changing. You talked about that, finance transformation role. Who would have thought that would be, a title in 10 years ago, right? And change is really hard. We mentioned that, right? It's very hard. And so what? Oops, there's 2 pages there. So as Safra Katz, who's CEO of Oracle and former CFO of Oracle, has said, the hardest part of digitally transforming is not the technology, it's this sociology. And as hard as that technology can be, even as that, that it's not going to work maybe the first time. Nick had that awesome experience that with RPA, so I'm going to hold on to that. But I know, Laura, it wasn't an easy process for us. I remember watching you. So talk about that that hard part of that technology was hard, but also the sociology around that.
Right. I think it was really hard. And at least in the finance department at the time that, we were going to start these changes, we thought things were working just fine. We're a smaller organization, 3 people in our finance team, and we were good. But there was this bigger vision and a bigger need for a transformation all over, and we needed to go along. So having that buy-in or that understanding as to why we were doing it helped. It also helped that, we were a team that, knew we could work together and get through things. I think at the end, looking back, it helps to just to know that it was, worthwhile. You need to know where you're headed and why, and that it was going to be worthwhile and worth the pain and effort that we did go through.
Yeah. I was almost afraid to ask, but it was worth the pain.
Oh, absolutely. 5 years out, we're looking back now, and yes,
5 years out, yes.
We wouldn't want to go backwards, of course not.
So AICPA and KPMG had a finance transformation report that really highlighted the people aspect of it. And so they asked this question about thinking about your organization's workforce. What are those critical success factors for finance transformation? And we've talked about some of them already, but I wanted to see from our audience as well, what they thought those critical success factors would be for their finance, transformation. And I know, Nick, when we talked about this, almost all of these, obviously the report related to talent talked about talent, but you said there's another one, right? The understanding and actually executing on what transformation is, right? And so I did add that, right? Like, what is this thing that we talk about? So talk about how, that critical success factor and I guess how you're going about getting that at your organization?
Yeah, I mean, that was the original challenge. Like, you hear all the buzzwords, and you know you need to transform, but how do you do it, right? And I think if that answer was easy, everybody would be done now, and we'd be on to the fifth industrial revolution. But we've taken a really collaborative approach, and we have some outside partners that are helping us think through having brainstorming sessions. But really focusing on all areas of finance, giving, whether it be treasury, tax, accounting, core FP&A, operational accounting, everybody kind of thinking about the issues and the problems they have and how we want to do things differently. And for the most part, we know that through a mix of systems and processes and technology, we want to be more efficient and we want to spend more time being strategic and doing those things. So really, it's just kind of sitting down, talking about where we want to get, where we want to be in 5 years, having a high level vision, and then having some experts kind of come in to help you think through that. And once you start having that conversation, then you kind of transition to, okay, how do we implement it? And then, tactically, how do we do it? And it takes a lot of discussion, and some of the discussions seem very 50,000 foot, and it's not tactical enough. And let's dive into it. I know, we want to just pick it up and go. And we had to sit back and be like, no, you need to have this higher level discussion before you get to the tactical. What does transformation mean to us? Because it means a lot of things to a lot of different people. There are some organizations that some solutions are great, other solutions you don't get the bang for your buck. But getting past that hurdle was, I think, one of the hardest. And I think because it's so conceptual and you're trying to figure it out, it's hard to get people to buy into that. But once you have a plan, and we're at a point now where we do have a pretty concrete plan for the first, year to two, and it's kind of down to the tactical. It's much easier to see and buy into. So, you do have to take a step back, and just like we talked about earlier, trying to envision this and the strategy and looking around the corner, that is all also incremental work to leaders who all have a full plate right now.
Definitely. Evanette, of these kind of factors or critical success factors, what do you think is most critical for your organization as you think of, transforming your finance team?
Our organization, it would probably be the mindset of the talent that's there and the workforce that's there. And we're a very small organization, so being able to grow, but still make sure people are receptive to change. I think that is the biggest challenge in understanding risk versus reward, so that they can see the value, even though there may be some risk, you can see the value in the reward at the end. And like Nick said, really taking the time to understand and document and map out where is it that we want to go, and conceptually, how could we possibly get there? And more importantly, if we don't have the skill sets required to make that happen, pull in other partners who are able to assist us to help carry us through that journey.
And so we almost made it through the presentation. I think we talked about it briefly, but almost made it through without talking about the pandemic, right? And how that kind of just, we were already talking about this and we kept on hearing about it, and then it's like, boom, right? A lot of things change, and a lot of things permanently, I think, have changed. I was just on a call this morning with a lot of our Maryland managing partners and discussing the permanent shifts to talent management that the pandemic has caused, and just the uncertainty of all leaders that they're facing as they kind of create these new hybrid cultures and what that looks like. But when we talk about trends, especially these technology trends, the pandemic really accelerated these dramatically. Some even estimate, it's almost like we're living in 2025, and these come from bursts. Just some of the trends that we see that accelerated. Is it changing for you all? Yeah, there we go. virtual reality applications, 2 years and 5 months, Internet of Things, 4 years and 5 months, blockchain even, which some people were saying, is in that Gardner hype cycle, in the trough of disillusionment area of that, 2 years and 5 months, adaptive and predictive cybersecurity, 5 years, like all of these things, that business process automation, 4 years and 5 months, like it really had a tremendous impact. So one last question for the audience is, how has the pandemic affected your organization's digital transformation? And I'll ask the same of our panelists too, because in some cases you might think it accelerated. In some cases, you might have to put projects on hold that you had. So, Nick, tell us, how has it affected your digital transformation?
Yeah, I think for us, it's a little hard to tell, because our acceleration of finance transformation just kind of dovetailed perfectly into the pandemic, and it was such perfect timing. Sometimes you get lucky. So it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg type of thing. But I'm sure the pandemic has accelerated. But I think the other thing it's done is it has encouraged adoption. So, for some people that are very brick and mortar, we have to be present, we have to be together. Seeing how technology has allowed us to close 6 quarters away from the office, it gives people a lot more confidence about, and it takes away fear, right? Because I think one of the big, a lot of the hesitance comes from fear, because not only is it the unknown that somebody else experienced, like this is the unknown that nobody really knows. There are very few, if you remember that chart, right? There are very few innovators and early adopters here. Yeah. So I think the pandemic has accelerated that, and people are a little more curious and a little less afraid of taking some of these chances. So I would say in those ways, it definitely accelerated us.
Yeah. Avenette, how about your organization? I know you mentioned the solar wind. Is that what
solar wind? Yeah.
The solar, yeah, that really kind of put a stop to it, but has the pandemic affected it?
So prior to the pandemic, we were already in the process of transforming some of our tools that we use. And it did change the decision, right? But I don't feel like it was the pandemic, so to speak. It was just more cyber issues. And I think the pandemic accelerated a lot of change in other areas. I've told the story before that prior to the pandemic, we never would have interviewed someone for a major position, interviewed them remotely. And we were working on, trying to find an HR manager. And during the pandemic, we identified somebody, and my boss said, well, we need to fly them in for an interview. And I said, well, can't we just interview them remotely? And he said, I don't think we could do that for the HR position. I said, the whole world is doing things remotely. How can we not? So he agreed, and we were able to interview the person, connect with the individual, and we hired the person. And they did wind up transferring to our Maryland location, but it was also because it was convenient for them, for their family. We went on to do a few other hires remotely, and it was just something that we weren't really fully embracing. It was more, if an employee was already with us and they had to relocate, then we would make it convenient to still retain that person because we valued the person. But we weren't open to having a new person start in a remote location. So I felt like just the acceptance of doing things differently was one of the things that we benefited from with the pandemic, and really just rethinking that idea of same as last year, right? We can't do everything same as last year. We can't do everything the way it worked before because we're in a completely different environment now. So we saw lots of change, and now that that's been done, you can never go back and say what we can't do because of something, because now it's, well, we've already done that, and why can't we try all of these new things?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, 2021 maybe put an end to that Sally, nobody wants to go back to 2020, right? So interesting. And but there's, things that we've learned in the pandemic that we definitely want to take with us and have permanently changed too. So Laura, any insights on that? Has it affected, I know we've done a lot of transformation prior and made it an easy switch, at least in my role, to be virtual. How about in the finance team role?
I do feel grateful that we were, a little bit ahead of this, not because we saw COVID or anything coming, but we were already working from not working from home all the time, but working from wherever it made sense for everybody. We were remote capable. And so when we had to switch out and be at home and have still been working this way, we haven't had any, it's just the same as working in the office for us. Where everything's up in the cloud, all except for those few checks that we have to go in for. There really hasn't been a problem. I still, in the past, people were still in the office and we had people working remotely and it was that mix. And now I wonder, and the question is, when will people want to come back together at least a little bit? I mean, I don't imagine everyone's always going to be in the office at any point in time, but I think something new to figure out is how to get back to some sort of a blended way. Now that people, can see, like Gavin had said, we can do this. We've been doing it well and without any trouble, but there's got to be some value in getting, people together at least a little bit.
Definitely. Collaboration.
Definitely. Over.
Yeah. Happens a little bit better in person. So I definitely miss that too. But I tell you that the video chat for me really seems like I've seen all of you many times. And I know that's not for everybody, but for me, it really does. It's an interesting dynamic. And I know, Laura, we've done a lot in our entire organization, and just to tell our members, that's very much on purpose, because we want to be kind of out there trying things so that we can help you along the way, right? We went to that open office concept. Now that's kind of going to maybe not the way to go with the pandemic now, but we did that on purpose. We like to be the leader for our members and to kind of learn our way through, maybe sometimes a little messily. So thank you for being patient for us. I know we had to transform a lot of systems, websites, our login system, all of those things, but they're really to kind of keep us on the edge and to help keep you kind of seeing and trying it out for you. So I'm gonna stop sharing now, because I kind of just I noticed some questions in the chat that I definitely want to get to, and I had some other questions just for our panelists as well. Let's see here. Someone asked, can you briefly explain RPA? So Nick, as the one that's using it probably the most, could you kind of give a brief explanation?
Yeah, it's like a little wizard that does all your work for you. So
sounds great.
So I think there are different instances, and I'm still kind of learning about RPA with from a manufacturing standpoint, like true robotics, like actual machines that are doing it. But for our world, a bot is effectively a program that runs. We have it hosted directly on a laptop that can run a process where there aren't a lot of critical decisions that need to be made. So a pretty basic example would be I need to take data from an ERP. It exits the ERP in 4 columns. I need to pivot those 4 columns into a summary table. You would essentially code the program to open SAP or whatever your ERP is, run the table, export the table, sort it in the way you want it to, run your pivot table, potentially present the pivot table in another type of document, maybe put it in a deck, and then save it down to your hard drive, or to your to Dropbox or your central F drive. Those are all things where I'm not making a lot of decisions. I don't have to choose between column A and column E. I don't need to assess it. So that bot, that program is essentially set up and coded to run all of those steps straight through. and give you your end product. And when you run the bot, at the end of the day, you will go to your Dropbox folder and see, data report from May 25th, and here it is laid out. That is, and by no means am I an expert on RPA, but robotics process automation is a really good tool to take some of those things where the decisions aren't critical. They're kind of rote processes that, I wouldn't say anybody can do, right? Because, the person behind this has to help put this together. But generally, that's where we use it from an accounting and finance standpoint.
Great. And that's a great example, too. That was one of the other questions. Like, give us an example. What does this actually do? So talking through that process was very helpful. Thanks. So any advice for leaders out there that are, maybe they're hitting some resistance from whether that's their technology group or their leadership in the organization? How do you go about kind of advocating for some of this transformation? I know, even you've mentioned you've faced some resistance. How have you done that? How have you what advice do you have for the other members?
One of the things I've done is try to really emphasize how it's going to benefit the organization, whether it's in a time savings, like Nick said. We all have a limited amount of time. So if I can create an RPA that, saves 5 hours of someone's time, and now that person can do more strategic analysis or forward thinking on what's coming ahead and how can we address that, then all of a sudden the organization has benefited. I also like to use a lot of analogies. So anywhere from think about the flip phone as opposed to the iPhone 12, right? Do you really want to send a text message having to press 7 4 times in order to text a certain way? And for other things, I've used the example of prior to the pandemic, maybe you would have gone into the store and picked up a candy bar and it was a mom and pop store. But now you're so used to going into the Target app or the Wegmans app or whatever app you're using for the store where you're going to shop, where you're going to select everything, you're going to pay for it, and they're going to bring it out to your car when you're done. And now you've saved 2 hours. So it's saying to people in the organization, we want to be like that, right? Like, I don't want to have to actually get out of the car and go in the store. I want some convenience that is going to save me time to stay here longer and do additional work and add value. So those, trying to relate it to something that people can understand, or they can say, oh yeah, I remember when I had the flip phone. Although we do still have an employee who has a flip phone.
Somebody just put in the conferences.io, but I miss my flip phone.
I don't miss my flip phone, right? So being able to get people to understand, one, what value is it for me, and then two, how far could we go? Just imagine the possibilities that we have.
That's great advice. For those of us, or I guess all three of us have done something in this area. Is there anything you would do differently? Again, that's a question I'm almost afraid to ask Laura, but is there anything you would do differently?
I don't know that we would do differently throughout the process, but I thought to myself, what I would, knowing now, being able to look back now, is just the old know that it will take twice as long and be twice as hard as you think, but that it will be more than worth the time and effort once we're through, and I wouldn't want to go back. So in hindsight, keeping that in mind is helpful.
Nick or Avenette, anything you do differently? Not that, in any way we've all arrived at this transformation, but just in what you've done so far.
Like most good things, right? I would have started sooner. But maybe we weren't ready, and maybe we wouldn't have had the support or the buy-in. So, all things kind of come in due time, but definitely start. I think me personally, I would have started learning sooner, reading more about technologies, trying to help determine what's good for us, what's going to be on the cutting edge. Because, you know, I have my Under Armour hat on, but I'm also an accountant with a career, right? And, you know, being able to see around the corner and know what technologies to use, I think is increasingly important to accounting leaders. And, you know, the debits and credits, just closing the books, you know, that will continue to have less importance versus understanding these complex systems and technology and when to implement. Those are the questions people are really going to start asking. So I think I would have started doing more research, and even now I still have a lot more to learn and a lot more to do. But, you know, I think that's what I would have done sooner.
And then remember that next week I'm spending some time with 60 accounting students next week at our Future CPA Leadership Series virtually, of course. But I'm definitely going to mention that, you know, take some of those elective technology courses and read up on things. Great advice.
Mm-hmm.
Avenette, anything that you would do differently?
Nick took my answer. It would have been to start earlier, right? To just start earlier. And I would probably add maybe take a course on influencing people more.
Yeah,
that way I could get what I wanted.
So not just the learning the technology, but learning the, you know, that sociology part to this whole thing, right? Because it's a huge component of it. Wow. Well, that was a fantastic conversation. Thank you, the three of you, for joining us and talking from your different perspectives, different seats, different areas of the profession. Any kind of closing thoughts that you all have for the folks? And actually, I have one more question now that I think of it, because I did see we have about almost 20% online that are in public accounting. So our members in public accounting. And so I'm curious as to, you know, you all have firms, I'm sure, that you work with. What have your firms done that you work with to support you in this transformation? And what could they do to support you more? I'm sure our public accounting folks would love to know how they can help their clients do this.
I would say the thought leadership, providing the thought leadership, because obviously this is paramount to the firms to change their model and kind of work through everything they do. So I think kind of giving companies, helping them with that thought leadership. We kind of talked about earlier, like, how do you start? Where do you start? EY is not our audit firm, but our partner on transformation, and they really have helped us advance on the journey. So that's probably one of the best ways. Like, what's out there, what would be good, like, you know us intimately, right? Like, what would be good for us? Just giving that thought leadership is probably extremely helpful. Yeah.
Avenette or Laura, anything that would be helpful from your firms? Or maybe you're already getting that, but what do you think that would be helpful?
I would think connection to resources, or just helping to identify opportunities for learning, because I'm quite sure they may have lots of customers who are going through the same thing. So if they could host some type of events or producing webinars or anything like that. And I've seen some firms doing it, not the firm that we happen to be working with, but other firms are doing activities like that.
I think obviously along the same lines, you know, during our change and changing our accounting systems, we ran into some changes in how we were recording things. And, you know, we needed our firm to help us, to guide us with where we making, you know, doing the correct way of recording the change in revenue recognition and things like that. So obviously the guidance that we would need from them.
Awesome. Well, thanks. I'm going to share my screen one more time just to go through a few of these last slides, just to let you know that our controller series, I think the last one is coming up. It's, I think, next week. So be on the lookout for that. We also have a business and industry mastermind series. So this is expert, you know, thought leaders, but also community. It's a real interactive program that we encourage you. And then June 28th is our next Candid Conversations with Cassie Rushing, talking about sponsorship and not just mentorship, and what the difference is, and and why it matters. And then of course, our beach retreat that Bill mentioned coming up in just a month or so. Looking forward to that. Wish we were at the beach with you all, but lots of great opportunities. So save the dates for those and Women to Watch on September 24th. I saw in the chat someone asking when we're going to be doing in-person events. They miss seeing us. We miss seeing you. We are planning on doing some hybrid events this fall, starting in September, and that Women to Watch event is one of them. So we hope you nominate, and we hope to see some of you there in person, but we understand, everybody's in a different place with this. So we'll be doing some hybrid events for, I think, the foreseeable future. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you next month's town hall on June 18th for our annual meeting.